This podcast is brought to you by Collector Legion. For all your single and gaming needs, there is no substitute. And if you're lucky enough to find yourself in LA with time to play, check them out for the best in-person gaming experience this side of the Pro Tour. Welcome to Split Second Sorcerers. I'm your host with the most triggers on the stack, Isaac Sears, and today on the pod we have the quarterfinalist of 2007's GP Daytona, 12-time SCG top 8er, and with his best finish in a Pro Tour came from where he wasn't even qualified?
Yeah, figure
It's
that
the
one
one,
out.
only Tannon Grace!
Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for having me. This should be fun.
Alright, well, things that are fun are trying to wheel cards in Limited. What's your favorite card to try and wheel?
Generally just some really bad common. I really like spells decks, like the blue-red spells decks that have generally been playable in almost every limited format for the last few years. So it's probably like one of the slightly overcosted cantrips. It's like, you know, like curate kind of card in that kind of way. Something like that.
What's the first Magic card you ever remember? Not necessarily liking, not necessarily hating,
Sure.
just the first one that came to mind.
The first one that I was like, I gotta get one of these was Singer Vampire. And then like,
oh yeah,
yeah, and then like Gabriel, Angel Fire, Shivan Dragon, like the, you know, because I played my first game in like 94, 95, and then
brags much.
Yeah, I know, right? And then my favorite card of all time, like my favorite art of all time, Deck and Blackblade.
He's got taste, folks.
Yeah.
If Magic stopped existing, what game would you pick up to fill the void?
Golf and probably go back into poker.
Man, you really are old. What's your favorite deck that you've ever played?
So you remember the blue white red flash decks? Like Jerry Thompson is really famous for this one. Neil Larson. That's my absolute favorite deck in Standard ever. In fact, I gotta find it. It's somewhere around here. I haven't unpacked since I moved. I still have it built along with some of the other Standard decks from that format, and we'll just play pickup games with it. Just because I love casting Azuri's Charm and Thought Scour more than anyone on the planet.
Who doesn't love winning with a 1/3 ground creature?
Absolutely love it.
What's your favorite non-Magic story from a Magic the Gathering trip?
Okay, so I took this really long trip with some friends once. We were driving to Atlanta from Baton Rouge. It's about an 8-hour trip, right? And we have this guy that hangs out with us, and everybody has this guy in their group. He's the one-upper. You know, when you tell a story, he's got to tell one just a little bit better. And look, I've been guilty of this myself, but he always has to go a little better, right? And then he's also the guy that, like, he adds in extra context that isn't needed for the story, but it's just like, hey, you remember we were at, like, Regionals 2 years ago? You know, the one that I went, like, 8-0 in? You know? But it doesn't, you know what I mean? It's not important for the story at all, but he just throws it in there. But the whole trip, no matter what he did, so there's 4 of us in, like, this little SUV we're driving out. I say little, it's a big SUV that we're driving out to Atlanta. And every single time he would do something a trip, I would subtly one-up him, right? Like, somebody in the car got, like, headache. And he's like, hey, man, I had some, like, Tylenol in my bag. And I was like, hey, look, I've got Tylenol and Advil, so if you have a preference, let me know. Like, just little things like that. And about the 6th or 7th time that I do this, my friend is in the car, texts me, and he's like, you're doing this on purpose, right? Like, this isn't actually real. And I was like, yeah, of course. And, like, I'm just messing with him. I'm seeing how long it takes for him. And he figured it out about, like, 6 hours in, which was, I got so much joy out of that.
The value.
Oh, it was so good.
What's your favorite Magic tourney venue?
Tourney venue? Oh, man. I'll tell you this. Nothing in Europe, because no AC. But, like,
Shade.
Maybe just Vegas because of the food options. Because, like, one of my favorite things is to, you know, get the crew of, like, your really good friends right after an event and just get, like, a really good meal. Even though that city is designed to take every last dollar from you, so there is the crappy parts of it. But probably that one.
Nice. What's the worst card you've ever registered in a constructed tournament?
So this one's got 2 answers. I registered Rebuke in a sideboard of a blue-white-red, blue-white flash deck once, because it answered a very specific thing, and I cast it on camera, and then I snap casted it the next turn on camera, and it was good, and people were asking me, should they play it? I was like, absolutely not. But the real answer, and you can find this, there's a deck tech video of this. It was like my first SCG top 8. It was like the green-red devotion deck, you know, where you like fireball people and you had like Whisperwood Elemental. I had like, what was it, Conjurer's or Briber's Purse or Conjurer's Purse or whatever in my sideboard. It's like a really bad artifact that it was good.
It's like
in, like
X.
Yeah, it's like
comes
X,
with counters.
X
Pay
something.
1
remove one counter, target creature can't attack or block.
It was only for one matchup that we probably shouldn't have been playing it because the matchup was that big of a wash anyway. But someone's like, this card's randomly really good. And I remember I got the deck tech, and Nick Miller's like, you have a 15th pick, like, limited card in the sideboard. Like, yes, Nick, I'm very aware.
And unplayable in your deck.
It was actually unplayable. I drew it against the deck and still got smashed. So,
for those out there who don't know, what's your day job?
So for my day job, if you like Magic and you've watched any coverage of it, or Flesh and Blood, or Hearthstone, or Poker, or any of that in the past, the thing that I do for most of my income right now is coverage of events. So, I've done like the World Championship, most of the Pro Tours this year, all of the Arena Championships, which I'm doing one literally tomorrow. I did my pre-stuff today. All the regional championships, and then I think next week I'm flying out to Dallas to do a Grand Prix for people, but that's for Flesh and Blood. And then I've got some more stuff. Like I'll be in Atlanta. I think you are as well later this year.
I shall be there
and stuff. And honestly, absolutely love it. Wouldn't trade it for anything.
Awesome. If you could have a card art tattooed on your body, which would it be and where would it be?
Oh god, I said Deck and Blackblade earlier. That one's got to be really good. But honestly, so I'll try to keep this from being too somber. The OG unplayable Tybalt, I might get that one somewhere because I had this really good friend that I taught how to play, and he went from an F&M grinder to winning a PTQ, and then winning a regional, and he was going to go to his Pro Tours, and he sadly passed away in an accident and never got to realize his dream in Magic, and I've missed him every day since. So probably something for him.
R.I.P. Respect. If you could change one thing about Magic, whether it be structures, bannings, or unbannings, what would it be?
Oh God, that is a really good question. It's really in depth. I think I would change the OP structure to be more like it was pre-COVID. I think somewhere in between 2012 to 2018, I'm going to call this the golden age of competitive Magic, because there was a clear and concise way for everyone who wanted to be competitive with Magic to to go to that and do that, right? You had local, big stage, bigger stage, and everyone had a shot, right? And nowadays, it's a little too hit or miss for me. I mean, we're just getting it back. Let's see what happens next year or the year after. We'll probably get back to where we were, but you don't really have it anymore where you can go to a PTQ, spike a PTQ, right? Go to the Pro Tour, do well, keep going there, play some Grand Prix in between, play an SEG in between that as well. Even play a Fireball circuit. There was so much stuff going on. Nowadays, you have 4 events a year. You have to spike it, and there's people who
you have to run really, really good.
There's people who finish the top 16 at Worlds, which we were just at, who are not qualified for anything and have to go to the regional championship. And for me, that leaves a sour taste in my mouth as a competitive player.
Yeah, no, for sure.
At my age and how long I'm in the game, I don't know if I could survive a year like that. Getting to the World Championships and then have to start over from the bottom, I'd be I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah,
so they have more fire than I do, for sure.
It's a spiker's Tartarus, to be sure.
Mm-hmm.
What was your biggest MTG level up moment?
So there's been a few, but I've got to say, on a micro level, just sleep. Once I got my sleep schedule to be better for more conducive returns, instead of just staying out to 2 or 3 in the morning, having drinks with the guys, and then getting up 4 hours later and trying to play 9 rounds. I went to sleep a reasonable hour, would get 7 or 8 hours of sleep, get up, maybe work out before the tournament, have a good meal. That, and then this one sounds so easy, but this is the hardest thing that I had to beat through my own skull, and I'm sure a lot of people will resonate with this. Play the good decks. For so long, I wanted to be smart. I wanted to feel smart. I wanted to win with this deck people didn't see coming, or this really good choice for the weekend. There's a reason why there's the best deck in the format. Learn it, or learn the deck that beats it, and play that. And once I started doing that consistently, I saw my win percentage skyrocketing.
Yeah, there's this great article written back in the day by Nathan Holiday that was literally just titled that, just play the best deck. And it's it was this long article saying the same thing over and over.
There's a there's a really good one from I'm trying to remember her current name. Carmen Complarens. She wrote one when she was at SEG. It's probably under her old name. And she wrote about and she asked me, she was like, can I use an example? It'll be almost kind of making fun of you, but not really. Obviously, it's totally fine. Because at the time, I was playing Tron a lot in the SE Tour, and people kept asking me, they're like, why are you playing Tron? I'm like, my average finish is top 4. with the deck. I literally played it in like 2 or 3 opens. I top 4 all of them. And I'm like, I like winning. You know, you can make fun of me, you can make fun of Tron players, but like, it was just an absurdly good
The
and powerful
numbers
deck.
speak for themselves.
Yeah, like, or play Infect. Like, people just shy away from those decks. They're hard to play, or like, you get made fun of for playing them. Who cares? Make fun of them while you're cashing the damn check from winning the tournament.
What's the best time period of your favorite constructed format?
Oh, we kind of hit on this. It was, you know, the blue white red deck, that, or what was it, Theros, where you had, it was blue white, mono black, and what was the other deck that was
Mono
really
blue.
good? In mono blue.
Mono blue devotion.
I thought that was one of the most healthy formats I've ever seen, because people would argue with you until they were, you know, blue in the face about which deck beat which. And then, and then you play the games. They were never like that. You're like, oh, mono black beats blue white. I'm like 70% against it. What are you talking about? You know, like, if I ever miracle Sphinx's Revelation, you die on the spot. You know, so I think that was like probably one of the best and healthiest formats we actually ever had. I thought it was completely awesome.
The true rock paper scissors.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
All right, now to get into the weeds.
Sure.
Say names if you wanna, but don't feel obligated.
Sure.
What's the worst you've ever been BM'd?
Worst BMX. Okay. I'm playing up in, what was that crappy city? I say crappy. It was a weird city in New York. We always played Syracuse. Sorry, it's like not New York. It's way up. It's impossible.
What's the city I'm no longer welcome in?
Yeah,
Syracuse.
It's impossible to get to. The possibilities are endless. It was the only decent restaurant in the area. So for people who don't know, I don't like make this a big deal. I'm hard of hearing. And I let my opponents know before every game. I try to remember before every match. I'm like, hey, like, it doesn't ever come up usually. It's like 1 in 100 games, something will happen. I'm like, hey, do you mind like telling me what happened here, or repeat yourself, or I'll just miss something.
Yeah.
Like, my hearing gets really confused, etc., etc. That happened in a match against my opponent, where like I asked him to cards in his hand. He said something I didn't really hear it, and I was like doing something else because it was a very complicated game of Legacy. I think it was like resolving Brainstorm or something, and I asked him again, and he refused to answer me. And I told him, I was like, look, man, like I told you, like I had a problem, like blah, blah, blah. And he was like adamant that he was just like, I don't have to answer twice, you know, blah, blah, blah. We had to get judges involved. Voices were raised. We had to be like separated. Because I was just like, look, man, just stop being a dick. You know, like just answer the question. Like just be a decent human being kind of thing. So,
Jesus.
Yeah, I felt that's probably the angriest I've ever been in a match for the way someone's treated me. So we'll consider that BM.
Well, on the flip end of the spectrum, who's the first player you remember idolizing?
Idolizing? Like really true idolizing? Definitely the Ruel brothers. You know, like however clouded their past may be, I loved their approach to the game of Magic and the decks they were building at the time. I would like I remember when you could only watch, the only things you got to watch was Sunday at the Pro Tour. And I would love to see the decks. I'd love to see what they brought. And then more of a newer age one that some of the people at home, if they don't know who the Ruel brothers are, Jerry Thompson is a big one. I remember the first time I finally beat him, or like the 5th time we played. I don't know if I've been more nervous at a match of Magic in my life, at like, especially considering like where I was at my career at that point. I should not have been like, you know, nervous anymore at that point. But
what was that? All right. Mom says the Dino Nuggies are done, so we're going to have to wrap up this pod with this last question.
Sure.
Milkshake or root beer float?
Can I say neither?
Only if you want to never come back on this podcast.
Well, I'm lactose intolerant, so I can't have either one.
All right. I'll save that question for another person and not be a jerk.
Donuts or cookies, something like that for desserts. Anyway, go ahead.
Taco or dumpling?
Okay, look. Dumplings are goated, but tacos are an all-timer. Like, you know, tacos might be the best food like ever made. Like, let's be real. You know, I've lived in like Texas, I've lived in like Las Vegas, I've been on like the West Coast and stuff like that. The tacos you get out in those places, man, like, it's hard to make a dumpling that good, but it's close. But tacos. All
right. Well, as we come to a close here, do you have any upcoming tournaments the fans can sweat you in or see you at, or perhaps a place where the good people can find you or your content?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at @TannonGrace. I do have a podcast on there with Ross Merriam. It's MTG Rants. We're on a little bit of hiatus. Like, Ross is super busy right now. His partner's in from out of the country. I'm like doing coverage every week right now, so I'm flying all over the freaking world. It's tiring, and the last thing you want to do when you cover Magic all the time is get home and talk more about Magic. So we're taking just a tiny bit of a break here. So you can find me there. I will be at the Calling in Dallas for that's like an SCG con, but it's got the Flesh and Blood stuff. I will be at the RC in Atlanta And I will be, I don't know when this is going to go up. If this goes up, this is Friday, what's the date? The 6th. Tomorrow
the 6th.
and the next, so the 7th and the 8th, I will be doing coverage of the Arena Championships along with my very talented crew that I'll be with. So that's all the stuff that I've got, I think, planned for the rest of the year. Maybe a surprise thing will pop up.
Fingers are crossed. Well, that does it for this episode. Thanks to my guest, Tannon Grace, Richard Garfield, and you, the viewer. If y'all have any guests or questions you'd like to see asked on this program, feel free to let me know in the comments or just hit me up on Twitter @LikeIkes. And remember, folks, it's handshake, sign the slip, and then throw the O3 deck in the trash, not the other way around. Oh, Tannon, before we go, what's the biggest punt you've ever done?
All right, I remember this one really well. Like it's yesterday. I still have bad dreams of this one. So it was an extended BTQ. This is how long ago that was. I was playing Blue-White Tron versus...
As you should.
Versus Balancing Act. Do you remember that card, Balancing Things?
Oh, yeah.
So for
Greater Gargadon?
Yes. So for everybody at home, it's a suspend spell that's balance when it comes off, right? And then they play a bunch of lands that they could, like, sacrifice for mana, so, like, they won't have lands, they won't have creatures in play, and they have Greater Gargadon.
And they have the border posts.
Yeah,
you gotta
exactly.
pick those up.
Yeah. So, it's like, I know that he's going to go off on the next turn, so on my turn 3, I have Natural Tron with a Signet in play, and I pass with Decree of Justice in my hand. So I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna cycle Decree of Justice. I'm gonna own this guy. This is like top 4 of a PTQ, by the way, for like Hawaii or something. And I'll never forget this because the guy's like, puts Balancing Act in the stack, and I'm like, okay, float on my mana in response. And he's like, okay, and I'm like, cycle Decree of Justice. And he's like, okay, your stuff dies, right? And I know in my brain that I'm supposed to like let the spell resolve, but I just do it in response. And the worst part is, this is game 3. I probably very easily win from here. And then one of the things I remember is Tom Ross, who like is local to me, right? He's just standing over my shoulder. He had predicted before this tournament that I would win the tournament. And like he's if you've ever seen him, he's the most stoic person alive.
Yeah.
And, like I just do the slow like look up at him, and there's nothing. Like it's nothing. He's just looking at me, and it's always in front of him. I've made so many punts in front of him in my life. He's always just happens to be there. So in my mind, Tom probably thinks I'm like the worst player ever. So Tom, if you somehow randomly see this, I swear I'm not that bad. I'm not great, but I'm not bad.